All right. Welcome to the PHONEWORD.org Registrar Workshop for Wednesday, July the 16th, 2014. It's 11 a.m. Eastern Time, and we are very fortunate to have some of the key folks from the FreeSWITCH.org initiative with us today. We're going to be talking about Verto and FreeSWITCH, as well as an upcoming conference called ClueCon. That I think is generally regarded as one of the premier events for the VoIP community, as well as what's cutting edge in the telephony and rich media delivery area. So, Ken, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you and let you introduce the rest of the folks on the session today, if you would.
All right. Well, first we have with us Anthony Minisali, and Anthony is the lead of the FreeSWITCH project and also the inventor of FreeSWITCH. Anthony's a longtime developer in the open source community, and he also has a background in carriers. In a previous life, Anthony used to run Astralink, which was one of the first companies to come in and provide SIP services to guys running things like Asterisk and FreeSWITCH. Brian West is also with us today. Brian has worked with Tony for well over a decade now, and is thoroughly familiar in all things VoIP. And Brian's got more SIP phones over there than I think the law allows. And then lastly, we have Mike Jarris. Mike Jarris has been with the FreeSWITCH project also since the inception, and prior to that worked in various VoIP projects and various other projects. And Jarris is responsible in the FreeSWITCH for mainly the build system and helping out, making sure that FreeSWITCH is portable across multiple platforms, as well as all three of them contributing to what is the design, Tony primarily, and then Brian and Mike, to what is FreeSWITCH today. So without these three guys, we wouldn't be where we are, I think, with a lot of the features that we have today in FreeSWITCH. And myself, I work with the FreeSWITCH project as a stable branch maintainer. So there's a lot of stuff going on there, and I think I'll turn it over to Anthony and let him tell us about some of the latest stuff he's been working with WebRTC and ModVerto and such.
Thanks,
Cool.
Ken.
Perfect.
Hi, so like Ken said, I'm Anthony. I forgot to play with the controls, put my name at the bottom, but I can do that later when someone else is talking. Anyway, what Ken was kind of alluding to is that we've been doing a lot of work with WebRTC lately, and that probably began about a year and a half ago. We were doing the project in stages, so our first thing to do was to implement all of the media engine aspects of WebRTC. A lot of people who are playing around with WebRTC right now are just using 2 copies of Chrome and a couple lines of JavaScript to force the 2 browsers to communicate and set up a call and whatnot. But the challenge for us working on FreeSWITCH is we have to program FreeSWITCH to essentially behave like another browser. So we have to actually do all the nitty-gritty low-level WebRTC code and implement all the security functionality. So that took up a large amount of time to take our existing media engine and make it capable of all the different things you need for WebRTC. And then for the first stage, we decided to concentrate on SIP first, since that was the easier way to get things where we could test them. So there was already a spec produced for doing SIP over WebSockets, and the SIP stack that we use in FreeSWITCH, the Sophia SIP stack, it didn't support the transport of WebSockets because it was a new thing, but we were able to modify it to support it. It has a pretty extensible code base for adding other transports. So that was the easy win to get it working, so we could make sure we were doing it right. So first we started out using Elio to turn the WebSocket into regular UDP, and then we got the media engine working, and then we went in and modified our actual SIP code to be a SIP transport. From there, we had working WebRTC calls, but then things were a little bumpy because the Chrome wasn't done, and they're still working on interop with Firefox, so everything was changing every week. So that took up pretty much all of last fall, and kind of stabilized now. Things have been kind of staying the same. So between fall and spring, I started working on stage 2, which was to make a more simple signaling layer to use between the browser and FreeSWITCH. Since the SIP works and all, but there's a lot of overhead, and the complexity involved to implement the SIP stack in JavaScript kind of makes it hard to modify and do other things with. It still works fine with SIP, and it's suitable for a lot of other projects. We support 2 or 3 different SIP stacks, JavaScript-based ones, perfectly fine. But the functionality is kind of focused more on being interoperable with other SIP kind of environments. So what we focused on was kind of a more simple thing. Coming out of the other side of FreeSWITCH, you could still use SIP or whatever else, but we wanted to have like a tight connection between the browser and FreeSWITCH so we could take advantage of some of the other things that we have to offer as a media application engine, as well as simply forwarding calls. So we came up with Verto, which is a JSON RPC based signaling and data modification protocol where essentially we have a WebSocket connection between stack that we developed in JavaScript and FreeSWITCH, which can be used either to set up calls or to simply exchange data, to receive events, to basically do any of the kind of stuff that you already might do with something like any kind of AJAX push engine like Ape or Meteor, or there's someone named after a cow, something, right? I forget some of the names, but there's several kinds of things like that, and so it's basically that same kind of paradigm mixed together with the concept of making telephone calls. So it's just a media element added with that. You can basically push your data right through FreeSWITCH and write standalone applications that are running on a server listening on a multicast socket that could send and receive events all the way into the browser back and forth. And also FreeSWITCH itself will preempt some of those and has built-in functionality. On top of that, you could write your own module that added some more functionality that was designed to talk to the browser side if you were to implement some kind of new application idea. And some of the built-in features we have is a data synchronization layer that we call a live array, which is essentially a combination of a hash table and an array. So it's a hash table that remembers the order that you inserted the records, which allows you to access them in either fashion. So you can insert or remove the data as an array or a hash. And it's done from the C side in FreeSWITCH, and then everything that happens is transmitted over events to replicate that same object in the JavaScript. So if you have some kind of set thing that contains a certain data structure in that format, you can just work on it from your C side, and the JavaScript object will just mimic the changes and gives you a callback when something changes. So basically, you don't have to worry about trying to implement all this code to look at the events and make things change around. You can just declare one of these objects and then synchronize your data to it. And then we built other objects on top of that for convenience sake, like a table-based one. So it's basically, you can take a table in your web page, and over in FreeSWITCH, you could add and remove data from the structure, and the table will change in turn with it. We use that as an example. We have a conference manager that will show who's calling, and then also update the rows showing talk data or whatever else might be happening. And that can also run by itself. It doesn't require a call, but it actually is able to be generated on the fly during the context of a call. So we have a pretty granular permission system. Say you call into a conference. Because you joined that conference, you are given permission to the data channel that tells you those information. It'll advertise that you're welcome to join it, and then you can send a callback and subscribe to that and bring up the conference data because you're in the call. And then if you call and you're labeled as a moderator on the FreeSWITCH side, it'll detect that as well and introduce moderator controls for you so that you can mute people and kick them and stuff like that. And Also, if you so choose, you can make a user who has explicit permission to all the conferences. So you can write an application that'll actually work even outside of the realm of WebRTC, like on other browsers that don't support it. You can still at least make a conference manager app that you could send people to. So it kind of does things with data exchange as well as the WebRTC. And what we're really trying to do is merge all these things together. We see a lot of people with WebRTC, they've already got this idea to shift the paradigm to the point where they're focusing only on peer-to-peer. And I think our mission, which is maybe a niche, but I think it's important, is to preserve the concept of telephony and merge it with this new technology rather than just abandon it all and try and do something different for the sake of doing it. I think there's lots of things that we've already established that are very good things that we don't just want to forget about in the name of trying to switch the paradigm. I like shifting the paradigm in more of a more creative way where we mix these things together, because there's so much out there still with voice applications, and really we've only just opened the realm of being able to create voice applications for everybody. It used to be a thing that only certain people with lots of money were able to do, and by making FreeSWITCH and exposing all the stuff and working together with all the other open source people, we've expanded the market, and a lot more businesses are now able to acquire this kind of technology and produce some of these things. And really our goal is to open up the creativity in the same way that the original web page kind of late 90s boom with everyone getting their first website and access to the internet and learning about CGIs and all this kind of stuff is still there. It's just kind of enhanced now. And I think it's kind of a second coming of that same sort of boom where you have all these people with such vast web and HTML experience, and we want to bring it together with audio, video, and telephony so that we can see what they can make without having to really focus on the deep part of the technology. We like to get that out of the way and have some foundation to work on so we can focus on creativity rather than some of the more boring technical aspects. So we're hoping that we're going to document up our API and get help on it and have people contribute and bring more code together, and we'll be able to produce some really cool applications.
Awesome. It's so awesome and so impressive in multiple dimensions, Tony. When I first heard about this, I was so impressed with the elegance and the ubiquity of what's possible with this, and the unleashing of creativity and collaboration. That's really why I reached out to you folks to have this session and the last week's session. So I really appreciate you being on here. But basically, for those that are listening, you can see an in-depth session on Verto as well as FreeSWITCH on the VoIP user conference, which is vuc.me, and that was, you guys announced this on, I believe it was June the 13th on the VUC. So I just wanted to mention that for those that want to kind of dig into this a little bit deeper. But I think your initiative, your intention of unleashing the creativity, keeping it simple, opening this up to the JavaScript and the web development community is absolutely brilliant. So thank you. And let's see, anything else you want to... Oh, one thing that I did want to cover, because we didn't really cover it last week, is the real dialable rich media that's available through this. And for those that are listening, you can go to webrtc.freeswitch.org and see a demonstration of this. But I know there are going to be some people watching this from the carrier community and the regulator community and all that sort of thing. But what Tony and the folks at FreeSWITCH have done is really opened up dialable rich media that not only provides a telephony connection, but also a video conferencing connection that can be in stereo as well as 3D audio. And the simplicity of it, the elegance of it, the power of it, I think are extremely impressive. So could you talk a little bit about the the stereo, 3D audio, the video connectivity, and that sort of thing as well.
Sure. Well, basically, the idea of doing stereo voice over IP has always been a possibility from the beginning of the project. We had a lot of kind of plumbing for it, but we never actually focused on trying to implement it because there wasn't really any way to use it. So we've been working a really long time on this project, and we have like a really big to-do list. So it kept keeping its way down the bottom because even if we put all the time and effort into making it possible, like how would we test it or use it? There's no phone that does it or no device. But you know, since WebRTC, they've actually adopted Opus as the standard codec, and it supports stereo. In fact, so does the Chrome browser. And I think Firefox is still working on it, but it's on their intentions. So,
by the way, I invited some of the folks from Firefox to the workshop today. Mozilla was a very active participant in the Federal Communications Commission numbering testbed workshop that occurred on March the 25th in Washington, D.C. So I know Mozilla has a keen interest in this area. So I'm sorry, you were talking about the various browsers and
yeah. So because they actually support it, it gave me kind of inspiration. Maybe it's the time to work on it. And we also had one or two people inquiring about it. Essentially, we had maybe last spring or so, there was a one of our users was asking about it. They privately tried to implement it, but the patch really was incomplete, and it sort of was right, but not, at the same time, it had been done so long ago that our changes kind of made the patch unusable, and so they really needed it, and I thought, well, I guess I'll just do it because I've been wanting to do it anyway. So I dug in and added all the rest of the stuff we needed to support it. It wasn't really that far off. There was just a few spots where we weren't paying attention to the channels and stuff. We already had the constructs in there to support it, but we didn't define any of the codecs and stereo in it, or did we like have any of the actual math in there for what would happen if it were? Because the hard part is if you're calling in stereo, you essentially have double the data and it's interleaved, and everything's great until you have to cross the audio stream with someone else who isn't stereo. So a head-to-head call or a conference where everyone is at all different rates, and especially we have different sample rates and combination of channels to worry about them. So it was a little bit of work, but we got that working pretty quickly, and then we were able to use Chrome as a stereo endpoint, and using computers that have stereo sound cards, we were able to use some examples. I actually have a binaural audio microphone, and we set up a conference call, and I could put that microphone in there, and someone else would call in stereo, and essentially the microphone, I could show it to you if you switch the video with me. I have it right here in front of me. I don't know if you can see that on the little screen, but as you see, it's got ears, which is kind of humorous. But it actually simulates the way the human ear with ear sounds. So it's got two microphones on each side, and it captures it from the perspective of a person. So I can put that in the middle of my room and then call in and talk to some of these guys, and they're like, they could hear that I was walking behind them and stuff, and the dog would bark, and they could hear it above them. And so without even doing any fancy tricks, we were already able to transmit 3D sound just because we were recording it in the format that would translate back to someone else. So from there, we realized that that's pretty great, but there's also that capability where the people are all in mono with we want to take advantage of why do we have stereo now. It sounds cool for the hold music. We can have stereo hold music in our conference now. But we found that the OpenAL library, which is used in video games a lot of times to create 3D sound, would work in our conference module. So we spent like a week and worked with the developer a little bit, and we managed to get his code working to the point where we could auto-construct a half circle with all the callers positioned around you. So basically, you can go in a conference call, and if the people who are using stereo can actually hear the participants in this half circle. And you can also turn off the auto positioning and like manually position them, as well as position text-to-speech events or audio files playing. So this is just the beginning. It's really only been available in the code since last week, and I'm sure as things progress, usually the way necessity breeds invention. So as people use it, we get more ideas of how to add to it. So it's but it's the infancy stage. It's already pretty cool. We have a weekly conference call, which we have one later today. Every Wednesday at noon Central, we have our ClueCon annual, or ClueCon weekly, I should say, conference call, and we're testing that right now. We usually run the latest version of FreeSWITCH on that server and get all the people on there to try and test the theory stuff. So that's basically what we're doing so far with the stereo and 3D stuff.
Well, when I first heard about it, it sounded like, well, kind of an interesting thing that was a bit of a novelty, but as people started talking about it, and I started to realize how subtle but powerful this is, because there's a lot of spatial information that's conveyed with audio. When somebody walks into a room, there's some spatial information that's associated with that, because you can tell where they're walking from and where they're walking towards. And it was brought up that in a conference call environment, as people talk, there is some spatial information that could be used to determine who's speaking. So I think it's really powerful. One of the things that we've talked about on the PhoneWord forum, which is like a sister event, we had Tim Panton on, and we kind of explored some emerging uses of WebRTC from the practical standpoint. And what Tim showed us was some sort of connectivity bridges between offices or between environments. So, in other words, WebRTC could be used as a way to bridge from one room to another anywhere in the world. And this spatial information, I think, could be really, really powerful in that environment where you just basically got this connection going all the time, and being able to hear the difference in terms of where the audio is coming from in a spatial context, I think could be really, really powerful. So,
yes, especially for people that aren't used to it.
Yeah, one of the things that I've noticed also since Tony implemented that on the FreeSWITCH conference bridge is in a situation like we almost just had here, where you've got more than one person trying to talk at the same time, you can still make pretty much intelligible sense of it, unlike you can in just a monorail conference where two people start talking and it's utter nonsense.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially for newer comers, because some of us have been using conferences, especially our team. We essentially developed the conference as our own work tool when FreeSWITCH was still very new. In fact, before we even started FreeSWITCH, we were working on Asterix, and back then we already had developed our own customized conferencing module. Basically because we work from different positions in the Earth, it's much easier to all be in a conference all the time and talk, and then we have sort of a virtual office environment going on. So we kind of built our way up. And so we've been using it for so long that we've all become seasoned conference call experts. We can be in a conference call with like 50 people, and we can tell all their voices apart, and we know who's talking, and we don't get confused by hearing other noises in the background. But anyone else who only uses the phone occasionally, or just when they have to, they come into a call and even the littlest thing distracts them. If they hear a bunch of different noises, they can't tell who's talking, and so I think it's even more important for those kinds of people because you really can't tell the difference. You can actually tune out some of the other noises when they're not coming from the place that you're focused on. Because I'd say, I mean, it's not. It still has a long way to go, I would say, but even what we already have so far makes a big difference compared to not doing it for those kinds of people. And I think that's who will appreciate it the most, or end consumers who just want to make a call. And then, I think the hardest part would be to convince everyone to wear dual headphones. Everyone's kind of used to either having a handset or a mono headset. So in order to make this work, you have to be wearing something on both ears. And there aren't all that many kinds of stereo headsets. They do have like dual mono ones where it covers both ears so that you don't get distracted by what's going on in the room, but it's really just a mono audio stream going to both ears. So it has to be actually a true stereo one. So I would say that's one of the hard things, is that kind of paradigm shift and convincing people that they can get a lot out of it if they try and use a device like that instead of what they usually use right now to communicate.
Well, I think you've got sort of an embedded audience that's accustomed to that sort of form factor, if you will, in the gamers, because they're already experimenting with, rich media via connection. And one of the things that I love about this is the ability to simply dial a phone number, or some sort of something that's akin to a phone number, and I think that's really powerful. So I'm excited about what I think is the simplicity of the connectivity that you're introducing, as well as the rich media of it, and I think it's just really, really awesome. So, well, go ahead, Tony. Anything else you want to cover about that?
I don't know. I was basically going to mention that the most powerful thing about WebRTC is that it's being pushed into everyone's hands. I would say some of the things happening in the technology, like we have some people, I guess the WebRTC hype helps everyone, because there's either people cheerleading for it, or there's people saying it's dumb. But either way, like, they're all getting exposure. So some of the people criticize it, but they're just criticizing it so that their blog gets more popular. It's like when there's a popular topic, it doesn't matter which side of it you're on. I don't really think WebRTC is like super new and changing everything kind of technology. It's kind of all stuff that was already there, but it all was brought together and it's being pushed into the hands of all of the users, especially the users that aren't super tech savvy. So you've got everybody ever who uses Chrome or Firefox now can run this app. And there's always been that thing with web development, all the way back to the early days when you had to have an external application to look at pictures because there was only text. Even then it was like, can't use text I can't use pictures on my website because what if they don't have an image viewer program? So I really have to rely on only the text, and then they finally embedded the images in the web page. I'm like, cool, now I can use images, and they're like, well, if we want more, we need these other things. And there's always been this thing about if I want my website to be popular and usable, I can't count on this like extra stuff they have to install because I don't know if they have permission to install it. Maybe they're sitting in a corporate environment, and I don't know if they'll know how, or if they screw it up, and then they're seeing big question marks all over the place in the page where it's supposed to be some kind of cool widget or whatever. So the real important thing is the fact that it's just built in. It doesn't require anything except the browser. So if you get that browser in their hands, which everyone has to do if they want to go on the internet, you've now made it possible to do it without having to screw around. So I think that is the important part about WebRTC, like not the great stuff it does. It's all stuff that we could have done anyway, but now everyone can do it and we can design stuff. And kind of what I was saying before, we get all the taking away worrying about the details, and it's just work on the creativity.
Yep. Absolutely. The ubiquity of this is, I think, one of the most exciting parts about it. And the fact that it is browser-centric, I think, is extremely powerful. So, I'd like to ask Brian, is there anything you'd like to say at this point?
Well, I think Anthony, hit on some of the topics I was going to talk about. You had hit on the gamers being the ones that use the technology like this a little bit more than the regular people out in the population. For example, Anthony and I are both using a gamer headset to talk on. So, that's the only headset we could find that had a microphone capable of capturing at the proper um, bandwidth and had stereo, and this is wireless. So this is very handy to have.
Cool.
This is for anybody watching. This is the SteelSeries H wireless. It works really well. It has a they say 22-hour battery life. It has at least that and then some, and 2 batteries. So for us, we're able to keep working and swap out while we stay working on FreeSWITCH and all of these nice new things that are coming down the pipeline.
Very cool. Okay, Michael, if I could chat with you for just a minute.
Sure.
Is there anything you'd like to add to the conversation?
I think it was touched on a little bit, but I think the most exciting thing with Verto stems from what it can be extended to do. It's kind of a meta protocol, and all of the ability to interact from the browser to the host with rich data just brings so many possibilities of different applications that can be written on that. Tony was talking about the standalone conference manager that he's been working on a little bit. But I think this brings, the obvious applications are like visual voicemail, but more interactive, multimodal communication kind of things in the web browser that allow you to push data back and forth. You could do a survey application that brought voice and video into the mix, and even interactivity with a real agent in the middle of it. All these kind of applications, this platform is kind of built to provide, and it's the kind of thing that there really hasn't been a clean API to do before. It's just building blocks so far, but I think it's all the pieces you need to build something like that. And it's just going to keep getting easier and easier to provide those sort of next generation interfaces that before WebRTC just weren't available. So I think that's the exciting future that this allows for.
Yeah, awesome. And I know the FreeSWITCH community is looking to build its community and to get some assistance on the documentation for this, as well as the coding, and there's a whole host of things to tackle around this. So I would encourage the folks that are listening to this to check out freeswitch.org, sit in on some of the sessions that are open on a weekly basis, talking about various elements of FreeSWITCH. But I'd like to talk to you guys a little bit about some of the things that I've been involved with that might be of interest to you in the FreeSWITCH community, because I think you're really opening up a very, very powerful tool set that can be used in a number of applications. And Michael, before we started the Hangout, you and I were talking about the FreeSWITCH.org community's involvement with E164.org, which is an independent enum tree, and that the whole paradigm of enum, of a registry, if you will, that contains a set of addressing for people to use, is re-emerging. And it's re-emerging at the level of the transition from the old copper network, the TDM public switch telephone network, into an all IP environment. The enum paradigm and the enum architecture and protocol is becoming sort of a central part of that whole initiative. So one of the things that's we intend to do here with PhoneWord.org is to really develop uh, a test bed, if you will, that can incorporate multiple enum registries, so that there's an opportunity to experiment with multiple registries that might have different functionality, different policy sets, different governance, and so forth. So, part of the outreach here has been to a global enum community, which I mentioned earlier, which is called NRENUM. So I think there's some opportunities to collaborate here, as well as if you look at what the Federal Communications Commission has launched in terms of an initiative for the enum or the numbering test bed, that certainly fits with enum. But just to shift just a little bit and kind of circle back to the functionality that you're ushering in with Verto and WebRTC and making it more ubiquitous and easier to use, as well as incredibly rich in terms of the communications and rich media, there's also a huge conversation that's going on around public safety. And numbering is a key part of the whole dialogue about public safety. So, what you were talking about, Michael, in terms of the rich media, I think there could be some very interesting experiments done in the realm of public safety, 911, etc., as well as what I'll call special communities like the hearing impaired and other communities that require certain, rich media sets. So I'm just throwing that out as kind of a topic. If anyone would like to, elaborate on that, please go ahead. But those are some of the areas that I think could be pursued.
Yeah, there are usage cases. We actually do have a large blind community that use FreeSWITCH. I don't know what facilitates that, but we do have. We also have deaf people using the video portion of FreeSWITCH to do translation. So those things are being used, and FreeSWITCH is facilitating those usages. So it's a very exciting thing.
Awesome. Okay. Tony, going back to you, is there any kind of wish list you'd like to put out to the community in terms of what you would like to see for the FreeSWITCH community? Any kind of contributions that you'd like to put out there?
Well, I would say we put our JavaScript side of Verto in Tree now. It's a library and managed in our Git repository. And if anyone uses it to make anything, I'd love for them to consult with us and make sure that it's architected properly so that the functionality is reusable and pushed into our library as much as possible. We use jQuery as an underlying structure for our module, so it would be great to just work on that and improve it. Other than that, basically we just ask that anyone that's willing to contribute, come and hang out in our community and figure out what they can do. We have a really great documentation after building up, where we have people with weekly meetings and they're building our new version of our wiki. And really anywhere anybody can help out is just always appreciated. So I'm not real picky about it. Like whatever people have that they can offer, we're happy to accept it.
And will you mention where people can find out about your regular meetings and conference calls and so forth?
Yeah, I'll take that one, Tony. They can. Yeah, I actually deal with that the most. So the easiest way for people to find out about those is they can follow us on Twitter at FreeSWITCH or at ClueCon, and we do regularly tweet out there. We also have groups on Google Plus, LinkedIn. They all are the FreeSWITCH groups there. We also have a mailing list that they can subscribe to, just a regular email listserv. They can just go to list.freeswitch.org and sign up right there. Our regular users list can get kind of chatty, but there's also a dev list for the developers. There's several lists there that they can subscribe to, of varying degrees of volume on there. Of course, they can always visit us at freeswitch.org on the web to find out what's going on there. We have the annual ClueCon conference coming up fairly soon, and they can go to cluecon.com to get more information there. And this year's shaping up to be a lot of security and a lot of WebRTC related, and for the carriers out there, a lot of scalability and how to scale FreeSWITCH and WebRTC and related things into large-scale environments. So that's another way. For the technically minded that like IRC, we do maintain a full-time channel on the Freenode IRC network. They can simply join #FreeSWITCH there, and it's most active during the daytime U.S. hours, but there's almost always someone in there helping people out. And of course, we do have on Wednesdays, we have our regular ClueCon weekly conference call this afternoon at 1 p.m. Eastern, which will have Bogdan, and I'm not going to murder his last name, from the OpenSIPs project will be with us. We have regular guests like that. Also on Tuesday afternoon Eastern time, we have the regular FreeSWITCH docs call for guys that want to help out with documentation. That's always a way to get involved. And every Friday afternoon, we have what we call the Friday bug hunt. We all get on a public conference bridge and we go through Jira and we look at patches, we evaluate bugs, and see what we can fix. And everybody in the community is welcome to join in any of these calls. To join these calls, simply visit conference.freeswitch.org. If you're in Chrome, use your stereo headset, because there's Verto right there, and you don't even have to pick up your phone. So we leverage these things to reach out to the community and the various social media. And if anybody has any questions, they can contact me directly, krice@freeswitch.org. And the other guys, our email addresses are pretty much our names at freeswitch.org. And they can, we'll be more than happy to help them get involved in the community.
Cool. And Ken, would you talk about the dates of ClueCon and what the schedule's like, and just give folks kind of a feel for what's available through participating at ClueCon?
Oh yeah, definitely. ClueCon is coming up this August 4th through the 7th. It will be in Chicago. ClueCon, that Monday is the 4th. ClueCon will officially start that day at about 1 p.m. in the afternoon. However, for OpenSIPs people that are interested in OpenSIPs or want to learn more about OpenSIPs, there will be that Monday a full day of the OpenSIPs Summit that's produced by the OpenSIP guys. Then FreeSWITCH will in earnest kick off with all the presentations and everything that Tuesday morning, and it'll go through the end of the day on Thursday. For guys that need to get more information on FreeSWITCH, on that Friday, the 8th, we will also have a full-day bootcamp style FreeSWITCH training. We'll have speakers from all walks there, from the CEO of OnSIP, John Riordan, or excuse me, he's the CTO. Of course, Anthony, Brian, Michael, myself will be there. We have guys from TruePhone, guys from Simwood, which are large carriers out of Europe, OpenSIPs, Camilio, their project leaders, Jitsi, the list goes on and on and on of who'll be there. We will have a security roundtable on Tuesday afternoon, which will have Phil Zimmerman, Travis Cross, and several other security experts from around the world. Phil probably being the most well-known one from his work with PGP and ZRTP, and of course now as a CTO. Silent Circle. So these guys will be there. It's not your average trade show like going to IT Expo where everybody's trying to tell you something or sell you something. Excuse me. It is definitely for developers by developers. Your technical staff will have a lot more fun there than your sales staff will. There will be some vendors there that are showing off their latest wares, but it's not a sales environment. It's definitely to trade information, learn about what's new in the market. And it's not just FreeSWITCH related. Like I said, we have all the other VoIP-related open source projects will be showing up there, including the SIP.js guys, and just too many to mention on this call right here in short order. For more information, they can visit ClueCon.com. There's links for the hotel. Like I said, it will be in downtown Chicago, so it's easy access all week long. People should go ahead and register today and come on out. Would be more than happy to have them.
Yeah, it really is a who's who, in the technical community of what's happening on the cutting edge and really where things are going. So my kudos to you guys for putting this on. I think it's a really awesome conference. And
so this will be the 10th one. So
yeah, I know.
I'm sorry.
So my presentation will have a pretty deep dive on the whole Verto thing. We'll show off, demonstrate some of the functionality as well as how it works. And anyone who's more interested in learning about it should definitely come.
Cool. All right. Well, I know you guys have some other engagements coming up here pretty quick today, and so we're going to go ahead and wrap things up unless any of you have something else you'd like to cover. Anything else?
I think it was a great opportunity to chat about our new stuff. Maybe you can come and join us in a couple of hours. Or 1 hour, actually.
Yeah, I actually generally sit in on that call, so I'm kind of quiet in the background, but I get a ton out of it for sure. And I also acknowledge you guys because I think you've really done some pioneering efforts to build an open source collaborative community. So one of the things that I get out of listening in on your calls and even your bug sessions and all that stuff is just how you're really building this community that's cooperating together and contributing something that's I think is really, really awesome. But this, in my view, is the FreeSWITCH community is an example of how things can work together. So I acknowledge you for that as well. There's a couple things that I'd like to highlight. One is that it's my understanding on August 1st for I believe the 500th VUC session, Henning Schultz-Rennie will be the guest talking about the all-IP transition. And Henning is the Chief Technology Officer for the Federal Communications Commission. And don't hold me to this, but that's what I heard on the last Friday's VUC conference. So you can get more information at VUC. That's like Victor Ulysses Charlie .me, like Mary Edward. But Henning really has been the driver of the testbed initiative, and he's also one of the founders of SIP, and has a very, very impressive background. So I just wanted to bring that up to anybody watching this, that'll definitely be a must-see. I have also invited Dr. Schultz-Rennie to be on the PhoneWord forum again. However, I'm still waiting for confirmation on that. He was the guest in February of this year, and he talked about the all-IP transition initiative. So anyway, that's something that's coming up that I think would be of interest to the community. The PHONEWORD.org registrar workshops are still in the building phase. The testbed initiative itself has been a little bit slow on the uptake, but hopefully that momentum will pick up. We are having these workshops on the second Wednesday of the month, in the late afternoon Eastern time, and then the third Wednesday of the month, which is this one, in the morning hours of Eastern, which is 11 a.m. Eastern. And the intention here is to build a community that can experiment with a new realm of naming, addressing, and numbering, and use technologies like Verto and FreeSWITCH and some others that are really cutting edge, ushering in a whole new value proposition and service set for what's possible. So I really appreciate Tony, Brian, Michael, Ken, you guys coming online. It is my intention that hopefully this, not only letting people know what FreeSWITCH is up to, but this is going out to an audience, a larger worldwide community of other communities that hopefully can start to collaborate together. So thank you guys, and anything any of you would like to say?
Well, actually, it's funny that you bring that up, because one of the goals with the Verto is to be able to go to other machines as well as just to the one that you're communicating with. So in kind of a big picture thing, we're looking to expand it to be similar to the way XMPP works as far as the model that it works, but with a different kind of underlying transport. We originally were inspired by XMPP when we made FreeSWITCH, and we thought we were going to communicate everything over it, and then we realized that it's not powerful enough to transmit machine-to-machine kind of information very well, because despite the fact that it's demonstrated the ability to set up a network where one guy can find another no matter what, and server he might be connected to, it's really great for IM, but not for like a machine talking to another machine, or for doing things like setting up phone call signaling. Google even went as far as to try and make Jingle work, and I think they probably ended up abandoning that for the same reason. It's a really good paradigm, but it's a bad implementation for what it needs to be. One of the things we ran into early on was that if you're trying to go through an XMPP network, you're bouncing through a whole bunch of servers that have maybe limited resources, and they turned on filtering. If there's too much traffic from one place, they just start cutting it off, and it was a guaranteed delivery, and it kind of just ruins the effect if you're trying to do setting up phone calls or things where you don't really want to be losing some of the packets, and you don't want to be implementing things like SIP had to do with UDP and send 10 of everything and hoping somebody gets it and that kind of stuff. So we've always kind of had this idea to bring together some kind of meta protocol that works similar to how XMPP does, only maybe either used binary transport or something more reliable. And Verto is kind of the first step on that. And so what you're saying sounds great. And if we could work together with other people, and maybe even like use what I really want to do is come up with kind of meta protocol where the format might even change, but the transport layers could be identified in packets and whatnot, and all kinds of cool ideas like that. Similar to what that thing Brian was talking about before we came on. So I'm definitely interested in that, and maybe keep me posted.
Yeah, I would, thank you, Tony. I would add that it's, in addition to a meta protocol emerging, I think there's some really exciting opportunities for a meta addressing, naming, and numbering construct. And that's certainly been my passion for well over a decade. And I think when you combine, the meta protocols with meta addressing and identity and security in terms of like, the addressing being the gateway to a public-private key pair, I think there's some really, really exciting opportunities. And what you're talking about in terms of involving other communities that might seem to be a little bit disparate at this point has some really exciting possibilities, especially when you start to look at what's happening with the Internet of Things. It's all coming together.
I agree. I had an idea in 2006, around the same time we started FreeSWITCH, but like right after it was first released to the public, that we still haven't acted on, which involved enum. You jogged my memory when you were talking about enum earlier. To somehow combine peer-to-peer and enum together in a way where the enum routes could advertise a more larger representation of what they have. So rather than like a detailed list of all the routes they have, just maybe the range, and then use peer-to-peer to kind of order them, and then have some kind of trust factor involved by how reliable it's been. And because right now, I think the problem with enum is it's built around DNS, which works really great for the ways that we've already used it, but the fact is that IPs tend to only have one destination, where phone numbers necessarily have lots of different on-ramps of where they come and go off of PSTN and whatnot. So it's actually better to be able to have more than one source. So yeah, it's something along the lines of peer-to-peer sharing of the enum route, and then once you pick that in a two-stage process, then you would query that actual enum route and get your actual route. So kind of sort of BGP kind of thing with phone routing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've been involved in the enum conversation for, like I said, well over a decade. I was heavily involved with the Country Code 1 enum LLC and the Technical Advisory Committee, and international conversations, and there's some really interesting mindsets that I think are starting to change around enum and this idea. Well, what was the original idea of end user opt-in enum? But I think what you're talking about, Tony, is that this possibility of presenting different addresses to different people or different communities that might be trying to contact me. So, what would it really look like if all of our disparate addresses started to have a relationship and started to work together, so that, my Skype handle could operate with my Twitter handle, could operate with my email addresses, could operate with my telephone numbers, and who knows what. But so, in addition to just having this persistence of the addressing and the identity, what would it really look like if there was some added, let's say, ability or functionality so that I could present different baskets of addresses to different communities that might be trying to connect with me. So anyway.
Yep, that sounds really great. And then we can advertise different services, such as whether or not you can make over RTC calls or Twitter or whatever it might be.
Yep, and it's all backward compatible. So very cool.
I'm game.
All right. Well, again, I thank you, gentlemen, and look forward to continuing the conversation with you, and hopefully we can open up some other communities that can join in as well. And that's really the intention of these workshops, is to work collaboratively and see what we can create as a community. So thank you. We'll call it a day, and look forward to chatting with you in the future.
Great. Thanks for having us.
Okay. Awesome. Bye.